The hum of the ship's engines echoed through the corridor as I sprinted, my pulse hammering in my chest. My hands were slick with sweat. The escape pod was just ahead, but the pounding footsteps behind me promised a fate worse than death. She was coming. The Beastwoman. The creature's silhouette filled the corridor as I glanced back, her 4 muscular arms swinging like weapons. The gleaming metal on her body caught the light, her eyes burning with an intensity that made the very air around me seem to tremble. She was faster than I anticipated, even more ferocious. I had barely reached the pod when I felt her hands clamp down on my shoulders, lifting me off the ground with ease. I gasped for breath, her grip like iron as she tossed me into the escape pod, with no more effort than tossing a piece of trash. The pod's hatch slammed shut with a deafening clang, and I was thrown against the cold metal walls. My heart raced as I struggled to regain my bearings. I hit a few buttons on the control panel, trying to launch the pod, but then something that made my blood freeze happened. The Beastwoman's form appeared at the hatch. With a growl, she slammed her hand against it, denting the metal with one strike. Her 4 arms flexed, showing off the raw power in each limb. She was no longer trying to kill me. No, she was more dangerous now. She wanted to fight. "Open the hatch." Her voice was deep, like a growl from the pits of hell. I froze, unsure of what to do. I'd barely escaped her wrath, but now she wasn't letting me go that easily. I hesitated for a moment too long. In a blur of motion, she twisted her arms and, with brutal efficiency, ripped the hatch open. The cold vacuum of space was just beyond her. I couldn't tell if she was trying to kill me or drag me back to the hell of her ship. "You've never faced anything like me," she hissed, stepping into the pod with a predatory grin. Her presence was overwhelming, like a storm about to break. I scrambled back, every instinct screaming at me to defend myself, but I had nothing. The only thing I could rely on was my wits. I pulled my blaster from its holster, but her speed was almost inhuman. She batted the weapon from my hands like a child swatting a fly. "Why do you fight?" I gasped, backing into the pod's control seat. I knew I didn't have long before she finished what she started. Her eyes gleamed with unspoken ferocity. "Because I choose to," she said, her voice a promise of violence. "And you are the one I will conquer." I gritted my teeth, adrenaline surging through my veins. I had to think fast. The ship's emergency systems activated, and the pod's autopilot kicked in, sending us farther into space. But it wouldn't matter unless I could somehow outsmart her. Suddenly, she lunged, her 4 arms reaching for me, one after another. She was a blur of deadly force, but I was quicker than I thought. Using the control seat as leverage, I kicked the side of her stomach, throwing her off balance. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She staggered, caught off guard. I quickly grabbed the emergency escape belt and looped it around her throat, pulling tight. For a brief moment, she struggled, but her strength was fading, her breath coming in ragged gasps. I couldn't believe it. I was winning, but then I realized something that froze me in place. The Beastwoman was laughing. "Did you think that would stop me?" she hissed. With a sudden twist of her arms, she broke free from the belt and spun me into the pod's walls. I felt the impact shatter my ribs, and the world blurred for a moment. When my vision cleared, she was standing over me, her arms raised, ready to finish the job. But then, just as quickly, The pod shook violently, and the lights flickered. Something was wrong. I glanced out the window, and a wave of panic rose in my chest. The escape pod was heading straight toward an asteroid field. We were going to crash. The Beastwoman looked at me, her smirk fading for the first time. "Looks like we both have bigger problems," she muttered. As the pod plunged toward the field, I knew I had only one chance to survive. I had to work with her, at least for now. My survival instinct kicked in. We need to work together if we're going to survive this. She considered my words for a moment, then nodded. "I'll tolerate you for now, human." We braced for impact as the pod hurtled toward the asteroids. The Beastwoman, still an unpredictable force, moved to the console, her 4 hands working the controls with ease. She was no longer my enemy, but I knew she could change her mind at any moment. The pod rocked violently as we neared the asteroid field. But with the Beastwoman's guidance, we managed to navigate the chaotic rocks. The emergency alarms blared, but she didn't flinch. Her focus was unwavering. With one last jolt, the pod made a rough landing on a small, rocky planet. We were alive, barely. The hatch opened slowly, and I stepped out first, surveying the barren landscape. The Beastwoman followed, her eyes scanning the surroundings with a quiet intensity. We had survived together, but that didn't mean she was done with me. Not yet. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. "This isn't over, human," she said with a low growl. "This is just the beginning of your trial." And as the pod's doors slammed shut behind us, I realized she was right. The real fight was only just beginning.